Hello, my name is Andrew Sheldon with the Oklahoma Progressive Network, and I'm joined today by Paula Lewis, who is running for the chairperson position for the Oklahoma City School Board. Thank you for joining us today. Would you mind telling our viewers a little bit about yourself and why you're running?
My name's Paula Lewis, and probably my most important title is I'm a mom. I have a 15-year-old son at Northwest Classroom and a 5-year-old at Wilson Elementary. Probably the second most important in this election is I'm a current board member on District 4 School Board, which is the downtown, midtown, uptown area. That's where my schools are. I'm also an occupational therapist. Have been one for 20 years. I'm a specialist in biomechanical analysis and chronic pain, and I own part of a pediatric clinic that we treat kids with developmental delays from the age of about 3 months till 12 years old. Um, I'm just passionate about kids in general. I think kids are our future, and the society should always be judged how we treat our children. And public school, is a right that every kid should have.
Thank you for that. So if you don't mind, I'd like to just jump into the questions. Right now, one of the hot button issues is charter schools and voucher programs. What is your stance on charter schools and what is your stance on voucher programs?
Well, vouchers is easy. I'm a no for vouchers. I don't believe in them. Charters, you can look at my record as a district board member, and my record is that I want a process, a consistent process for charters in our district. And I want our district to look at where we see that they can help us, but that we also ensure that every child has access to the charter school if it works for them and it's what their family wants.
Okay. Right now, the school budget in Oklahoma is a big issue. Everyone is aware of it. And what is your plan to help recruit and retain high quality teachers in spite of our current budget crisis?
That goes in line with my very first goal. My number one priority, if I become the board chair, is superintendent stability. Without stability at the top, and if you look at it, we've basically had 19 changes in leadership between the chair and the superintendent over the last 20 years. And to retain high quality teachers, you need to have them feel supported. And there's not anyone that can say they feel supported when leadership changes 19 times in 20 years. So I believe that if we can be a board that supports the superintendent by holding them accountability. I mean, honestly, accountability is support because the superintendent knows what we expect. If we can keep a superintendent for a contract 3 years, and then hopefully a second contract for another 3 to 5 years, that will allow the cabinet to stabilize. And if the cabinet stabilizes, that will allow the principals to stabilize. And if the principals stabilize, that will allow the teachers to stabilize, and curriculum. And curriculum and support are the two things that we hear complaints about from teachers. Not to not mention pay, but the board has no control over pay. That is definitely a legislature issue.
Yeah.
But that's how I would retain them, is by creating a stable district that people feel supported and happy to work in.
Okay, great. You mentioned accountability. School accountability as far as performance goes, that's something that people bring up when they talk about charter schools and performance and voucher programs because they want to send their kids to better schools. How will you hold schools accountable for their performance, and do you have any sort of plan to improve underperforming schools?
Accountability at a school level is honestly specifically the superintendent's job in the cabinets. So what, as a board chair or a board member, that we do to hold schools accountable is hold our superintendent accountable. And we set forth what our, dream expectations are and what our minimum requirements are. And again, through superintendent stability and cabinet stability and principals knowing that this is how we do business at OKCPS, that will be a way to hold schools accountable because we will have standards set. When you have that many changes in leadership, it's unfortunate, but principals who've been in the district for a long time, they've had many different people tell them what is expected of their school.
One thing that has been kind of in the public conscious a little bit is changing the school week from 5 days to 4 days. What is your position on adjusting the school week to 4 days?
I have mixed opinions on it. I don't feel like it's a feasible school week for the parents that we serve in this district. We serve working parents, and working parents have to have somewhere for their children to be Monday through Friday. And daycares don't go along with that. They're not going to be happy to have a kid only on Fridays and not Monday through Thursday. At the same time, I mean, as a parent, sometimes you want to have your kids more. So I mean, there's pros and cons to the 4-day work week, 4-day school week, but the definite con, in which I'm 100% opposed to, as a school board member and as anyone who believes in education, is we know the studies show the more time a child has in front of an instructor, the more likely they are to be successful in education. That's why we went to the continuous year calendar.
That brings me to my next point on that is, if that were to be instituted, how would you ensure that students are receiving the same quality education as a student who was working in a normal schedule?
I honestly don't think you can, unless we were to institute some kind of blended learning program where perhaps there were some more opportunities, whether we partnered with libraries and did computer work, because not every kid has a computer at home. But I don't feel like that a 4-day school week is optimal by any shape or form. So it would never be anything that I would vote for. It would be something that was forced upon us by a budget that wouldn't withstand anything else.
Okay. So, as you know, there have been a lot of reports in the last year in particular, internal reports from the school system, as well as the Oklahoma Advisory Committee's report, the School to Prison Pipeline. These reports have highlighted the fact that minority students with disabilities, are disproportionately targeted for disciplinary action. What are your thoughts on the use of disciplinary action in regards to this, the minority students and the disabled students?
You can't argue with facts, and the facts are there's a disparity between the number of long-term suspensions of African American males, Hispanic males, and Caucasian males. We have made progress on that. I mean, as a board member, I know that we have brought down the overall suspensions because we were suspending too often. However, what we have not been able to do is close the gap between the disparity. And it's a complicated issue. That's the thing. When you start looking at these cultural, social issues that occur, it's more than just a teacher saying, you're a dark child, you're not, I'm going to suspend you. It's more of, training, cultural training, like what is a normal expectation? What are the triggers that teachers have? How do we train teachers and principals and whatever staff is interacting with these kids to be able to truly assess culture before, and their own issues with culture, whatever their own biases are in their head that they were raised with, whether they believe them or not, but they're still in our heads sometimes. That's the way we're going to really make the gap get smaller.
You mentioned suspensions. The Oklahoma State Senate has Senate Bill 81. It just passed committee last week, I believe. It basically, what it does is it lowers the threshold for school suspensions from the 6th grade down to the 3rd grade. Are there ways that we can improve and or reduce our disciplinary actions in our school system?
I don't believe that the discipline we see in today's school system is the discipline that we saw when I was in school. I believe that in our district that we have kids that are coming from hard places, that they've had some kind of trauma at crucial developmental times in their life, whether it be not enough food, neglect, abuse, being placed in foster care, adoption, death of a loved one. But there's science out there that says when kids go through trauma at crucial developmental times in their brain, they get locked in the part of their brain called the amygdala, which is their fight or flight survival mode. And when you do brain mapping, there's very few synapses that are coming out of the amygdala going to their higher cognitive areas in their brain. And so in my opinion, and based on science, that unless our school does a better job of having hard conversations about what these kids have as barriers to learning, we're not going to change the outcome on learning. But if we're willing to, it's one of the things I applaud Superintendent Laura for, if we're willing to really admit that we have issues that are more mental health issues, for lack of a true better statement, that we need to work with our community partners. We need to bring licensed counseling in. We need to help these kids move out of that part of their brain so that they care about learning. Because, I don't know about you, but honestly, if I'm hungry at night, I don't want to do my homework.
Yeah.
Truthfully, that's where I feel like we need to do with discipline, because discipline is coming out of kids in a survival mode. They don't make good decisions because they feel like they're having to protect themselves at all time. And it may not be the way it may not have to be someone threatening to hit them at the time, but it could be anything because they're losing control. And that's what they do, is they lose control.
Okay. So that's all I have as far as questions goes. We want to thank you very much for coming out and talking with us today. Do you have any final thoughts that you would like to impart upon the voters?
I do want to go back to the discipline. So I think what I didn't say about it was, if they do move it back to third grade that we can suspend kids for long term, we're going to have to come up with an alternative setting that keeps kids in front of instructor teachers. We have a great in Emerson. Emerson does well with our kids that we're not functioning in one of our other schools, and they go there for an alternative school, and we're doing really well with them. We're looking to expand Emerson to a South Side campus, but we're going to have to find a better option for elementary kids, because there are parents out there too who have kids in the system who are not that child, and they have a right to have an education without a disruptive child in the classroom as well. So you're balancing out both sides of it. So for discipline, I definitely think that's where we need to go. Why I think I'm the best candidate for the chair is I'm the only one with experience on the board who's on the docket right now. I've been there for a year. I know where we're going. I know what we need to do. I can start day one. I know the other board members. I have rapport. So that alone makes me the best candidate. My three things that I want to do is superintendent stability, transparency. I want our board and our district to be as transparent as the law will allow us to be. I want the public to see the hard decisions that are made and the true breadth of what this means and the complexity of every decision that comes out. And I want us to be transparent about the wonderful things that are happening. I would challenge any of you to walk into any of our 80 schools, and I would almost bet that 9 out of 10 times you're going to come out of there thinking, oh my gosh, that's an amazing school. That's not what the news says about it. And then the third thing is I want to remove barriers for all kids to learning, whatever that looks like. If they have a barrier to accessing the part of their brain that helps them learn, I want us to remove those barriers, and I think I can do that in the chair position.
All right. Paula Lewis, chairperson, candidate for the Oklahoma City Public Schools. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.